Welcome into Words with Wallace. I'm your host, Nick Wallace. Coming at you, it's Monday, November 17th. What's going on, guys? Can't seem to get these podcasts out on a weekly basis anymore. Maybe I'm just a monthly NBA podcaster these days. Not sure what the market for that is, but that's not going to stop me from getting out a fantastic podcast for you guys today. We've settled into the NBA season pretty nicely here. I mean, most teams have played like 11, 12, 13 or more games at this point in time. So it's a nice little sample size. Like the standings are starting to materialize, and we have some surprises there, right? And because we do have a sample size to work with, I want for today's podcast to go through and rank the most impressive and the most disappointing teams of this young NBA season, because I feel like the teams that we're going to talk about today are really the stories of the season so far. And before we get into all that, we do have Celtics Corner that I want to touch on real quick. We have a couple other news stories to hit on that we'll do real fast, including Stephen Curry leaving Under Armour. He's now a free agent and wore Nikes. He wore a pair of Kobe's for his first game and dropped like 50 on the Spurs in a win, which was incredibly impressive. So that was kind of a fun nugget for you. There's a ton of injury news, and I'm not going to name nearly all of them. I mean, most of the injury news we're going to kind of get to as we go through some of the most impressive and disappointing teams along the way here. But I just want to call out the Jazz are in a tough spot. Walker Kessler is done for the season with I believe it was like a lumbar tear. It's a shoulder injury. So that's a real bummer for a young Jazz team, having one of the guys that was thought to be maybe the future of this team, one of the only guys that might be safe around the trade deadline. And like I said, again, tons of other injury news that we will dive into as we get deeper into this podcast. But let's kick it over to Celtics Corner real quick before we go through the most impressive and disappointing teams of the NBA season so far. Let's get into Celtics Corner. At the time of recording this podcast, the Celtics are 7-7, and they are the 10 seed in the East, so they would just be sneaking into the play-in race in the Eastern Conference. Coming off a nice little home win against the Clippers yesterday, finally we get a game where both Peyton Pritchard and Derek White shoot the ball well from three in the same game. That was pretty great. I think they both had pretty great performances all around. It was mostly Pritchard that was carrying our offense early in the game, and then Derek White had a couple clutch buckets late to close it out. My biggest takeaway, just watching parts of that game anyways, was James Harden, how unbelievable he is. Really, he had the full focus of the Celtics defense all night long, and we really didn't do that great of a job of slowing the guy down. I know there was a couple clips that went viral because our guy PP touched ground. Harden dropped him a few different times. I mean, that's going to happen. He's one of the best scorers ever, so can't knock the hustle from Peyton Pritchard on that one. In general, I think just overall feelings around the team, I'm mostly happy with how things are going. Like, we've had a couple tough losses. Like, the one that comes to mind is loss at the buzzer where Keita had a potential putback that he just kind of rushed. I mean, he didn't know exactly how much time was left on a Derek White heave that could have won the game. The play was kind of broken down before that, and that would have been a nice little win. Always great to beat Philadelphia, even though we've already played them 3 times this season and we're 1-2 against them on the year. But in general, like, we're going to lose close games. We're not the same team that we were as of last year, but at least it's a little bit less frustrating over the last like 5 or 10 games compared to the first few. It feels like some of those rebounding woes that we were suffering through went away. Part of that is due to the emergence of Keita and how overall great he's been as an energy big and somebody to crash the glass. I'm not going to hold that putback against him too much. I do just want to give Jaylen Brown some love. I mean, he's just been unbelievable this season. Like, I was a little nervous of what it was going to look like asking so much of Jaylen Brown with no Tatum this year, but he's 27, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists on 50, 34, and 77 shooting splits. So again, 50% from the field, that's great. 34 from 3, you kind of expect that. You'd love to see Jaylen shoot a little bit better from the line, like you could say his entire career, but overall that's not too surprising. But just 3 turnovers a game for the level of usage that we're getting from Jaylen Brown is pretty impressive. Like, I can definitely live with that. And just in general, his handle, how comfortable he is getting into his shot off the dribble looks so much better than before. Like, he's a mid-range assassin. He still plays with a lot of great energy. He still blows through guys that are smaller than him. Like, his physicality seems to be taken to another level. He just looks super comfortable, and he's playing at an all-NBA level. And frankly, he's not going to get a lot of buzz for that, so I just want to kind of bang the drum now. For what we've seen from Jaylen Brown, he's comfortably been the Celtics' best player, and just want to show that guy some love for improving quite a bit this offseason. In general, as we look ahead to like what the next 20 or so games could look like for the Boston Celtics, if I had to guess, like right now, do we stay at the 10 seed? Do we go higher? Do we go lower? If I had to pick one of those two outcomes, I'd say we're going to end up trending a little bit higher than that. If you actually dive into the advanced stats around the Celtics a little bit, it's actually a little bit more encouraging than what you might think, because again, obviously we're exactly a 500 team on paper, but we're 8th in offensive rating, 11th in defensive rating, and then 8th in net rating as well. We're also dead last in the league in turnovers and maybe turnover percentage as well. So those are some reasons to be encouraged with the team. Again, once the rebounding woes of the first couple games of the season have kind of subsided a little bit, we're starting to look like a more serious team, so to speak. We have a rotating cast of guys. The rotation is kind of all over the place. Now we have guys like Jordan Walsh who have emerged a little bit more lately. Really like his energy on the defensive end of the court. You could say the same exact thing about guys like Josh Minott, who have been starting several games this year, as well as Hugo Gonzalez, who's gotten a few starts himself. So it just feels like as long as one of those three is on in the game, where maybe they're hitting some outside shots, and at the very least, maybe they're making some plays on both ends of the court. Like as long as one of those three energy guys has it going, the Celtics will have a shot to beat anybody in the NBA if that outside shot is falling. If I were to pick nits about this team right now, I am just pretty frustrated with the usage of Anthony Simons, right? There's some games you watch him play, it's like, is this guy just like a slightly watered down Dame Lillard? Because his shot's unbelievable, the way he can get into his offense. We saw him learn from Damian Lillard for many years out there in Portland, so I guess that makes some sense. But he is trying on defense. Obviously, he's not an all-world level defender, and he's certainly, no Derek White or even Peyton Pritchard on that end of the court. But I feel like he's been pretty locked in for most of what I've seen from Anthony Simons this year. But even in the games where he just has it going, like he had a 25-point half in the first half against the Orlando Magic a couple weeks ago. And then in the second half, he got like one, maybe two shots that were decent looks and they didn't go down. And then even in a game like that where he was completely red hot to start the game, Joe Mazzulla refuses to close the game with him on the court. And I feel like he should have a little bit more of an open mind when it comes to maybe trotting out that lineup of Simons, Pritchard, White, Brown, and then maybe Keita in that situation. I know that's a little bit smaller, but there are a lot of teams in the NBA you can get away with trotting out that type of a lineup with White and Brown's ability to guard bigger players. So it just feels like there's some games where he just doesn't have it. Like last game against the Clippers, he was brutal. I don't even think he got into the box score. I don't think he scored a bucket, but he only played like 11 minutes at the same time, so maybe I'll have to go back and look at those minutes a little bit closer. But in general, I just want to see him carve out a more consistent role. It doesn't feel like Mazzulla ever wants to have him on the court at the end of a close game. So to me, it signals that eventually we are going to trade this guy at the deadline, but I don't really know what his value is going to be if he can't carve out a consistent spot in this rotation and be a guy that, depending on the matchup, Joe Mazzulla can turn to at the end of the games. Because if you are looking for offense and our best offensive lineup, there's really no way that Simons isn't on the court in that situation. So it'll be interesting to see how the next 10 or so games play out, and we'll check back in on the Celtics within the next episode. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, which is going to be ranking the most impressive and also the most disappointing teams of the NBA season so far. We're going to start positive. Why not, right? I think there's a lot of teams that you can mention in this category. Looking at the standings one last time now, I am realizing the Raptors are kind of red hot too. I mean, they're 8-2. They've won 4 in a row. I'm not going to get there on the Raptors yet. I already did all my notes without the Raptors, so sorry to any Raptors fans that are listening. I can't get there with them as a real threat. Honestly, I haven't watched a whole lot of Raptors yet either. So we'll see. I know Scotty Barnes is playing well. They have 2 players in Ingram and RJ Barrett that basically put up identical stats every single night. And so at least one of those 2 guys is going to be going. So I do like the team overall, but I do think they're more of a lower seed in the Eastern Conference than I do a higher seed. So we'll give the Raptors an honorable mention. And honestly, before we get into the top 4, I have one other honorable mention team as well. And again, this is some of the most impressive teams in the NBA. So you might be asking, Nick, why are you about to talk about the Charlotte Hornets right about now, who are 4-10, currently the 12th seed in the Eastern Conference? And the reason I am going to give them a nod as another honorable mention team here is I think that the Hornets low-key might have just smoked, like absolutely knocked this draft out of the park with their recent rookie class. Just to run through it real quick, a guy who they took at number 4, Con Knuppel, has been getting a lot of positive buzz. I'm sure you guys, if you are NBA fans, have at least heard that name before and seen a little bit of what he's done so far. He's been fantastic for the Hornets. I mean, he's a white guy out of Duke. You think that he's just there to knock down shots from the outside, but there's a lot more to his game. I was really impressed, especially with the game that he had the other night against the Milwaukee Bucks. He had a massive homecoming for that game. He's from Milwaukee, and it was reported that he had 2,000 people at the game in Milwaukee for, again, his first ever game in Milwaukee. But 2,000 people, that's how you know that people love Con. I mean, obviously he's well received. I think maybe a few hundred of them might have been family members because there's a shitload of Knuppels out there, and many of them are going to be in the NBA within the next couple years, I'm sure. But needless to say, he's clearly well regarded in his hometown, and he was incredible at getting downhill that game. Like, he doesn't really have a lot of burst to him. Maybe it's like sneaky fast. Maybe that's a little too on the nose to say that about a big white guy, but man, he could get downhill, and just all the IQ stuff that he has is through the roof, like his spacing, where he's at on defense. Like he just always seems to make the right play, which is very cliche. And it's probably said too much about rookies, but for Khan, he quite literally checks every box that you'd be looking for. So I want to give them some credit there because he was a risky pick at 4, I guess you could say. Some people might have gone Ace Bailey, and obviously the jury's not out on any of these guys, but it seems like he is the perfect fit for some stability, is exactly what the Charlotte Hornets need, and that's what he's going to bring them. So love the pick at Khan at 4, but beyond that as well, the Hornets had a couple second-round picks that are giving them great minutes, starting with Khan's teammate at Duke, Sion James, who they took at number 33 in the draft, so the start of the second round there. He's actually started several games for the Hornets because, as usual, LaMelo's missed a lot of time. Brandon Miller has a shoulder issue that he should be back with soon, but he's basically been out since like the second game of the season. So immediately into this guy's career, he's a second-round pick against Sion James at Duke. He's starting for the Hornets. He's giving them great energy on the defensive end of the court. He's like kind of short and like stout. He's like strong as shit, and guys just like can't get through him. He's also shooting nearly 50% from 3. Granted, it is on low volume, but I really like what I've seen from Sion James, and I think he's going to plug in nicely when everybody's healthy. And then finally, big Kalk, Ryan Kalkbrenner. I believe he came out of Creighton. He was pick number 34. So again, one pick after Sion James in this past year's draft. I mean, he's just huge. He's big as shit. I think he's only lifted at like 7 feet, maybe 7'1", but I'm sorry, he looks way bigger than that. He towers over nearly everybody that I've seen him play against. And I'm not like blown away with Kalkbrenner. I mean, he's big. Like if you look at his field goal percentage, like he's shooting like 90% because all he does is dunk. He got a lot of publicity on like NBA's like main Twitter page because he had like a perfect shooting game the other day. I'm like, all right, he dunked 8 times, snuck in a post hook over there when he got matched up on a guard, but whatever, man. I mean, Kalkbrenner looks pretty good. He held up pretty well for somebody at his size. Like, he does have some ability to move his feet a little bit. Like, he's still going to get played off the court in serious matchups. But look, the fact that you're looking at 2 guys in the second round that you can start immediately, like within the first couple of weeks of their NBA career, and they're already being like positive players in the box score, I really like that. And again, once LaMelo Ball, once Brandon Miller comes back, I think the fit of all those guys together is going to be really good. So I've been impressed with what I've seen from the Charlotte Hornets. They're clearly a tier above whatever that last tier in the NBA is, which you can make fun of them, but that's where they've been the past couple years. And so because they've graduated from that tier, because it seems like they smoked this draft class with 3 rookies that can really play right away, I'm going to have the Hornets as my honorable mention team when I'm ranking the most impressive teams in the NBA. So moving on to the number 4 spot on this list, we have the San Antonio Spurs, and I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off and get the bad news out of the way. Earlier today, we got a report that Victor Wembanyama is going to be out at least a month with a calf strain, and that just seems to be the new hotness injury going around. I mean, everybody has it. We're going to talk more about Ja Morant. Wemby's teammate, Dylan Harper, has had a calf strain that's kept him out a couple weeks, and it'll probably keep him out a couple more weeks. So I want to talk about the Spurs now while they're still high in the standings. They are going to take a dip here within the next few weeks. And look, a month without Wemby is brutal for this team. I mean, he's a guy in the MVP conversation, obviously, with how incredible he started the season. But right now, they are 9-4. They are the 4 seed in the Western Conference. And I just think in general, what I've seen in this sample size where they're healthier, right? They're healthier than what they're going to be the next month or so, but they're still not even all the way healthy. And they've been atop the Western standings in that conversation for the past couple weeks. And just in general, I don't think it's a fluke. Like, I felt like I was a little higher than consensus on San Antonio, but I still had them as like an 8 seed or a 7 seed, something like that in my preseason predictions. And clearly they are more talented than that. They have the talent to be a top 4 seed in the Western Conference. And again, I don't think that's a fluke. On my last podcast, I was talking about, hey, the Fox trade, he's coming back into the mix and the Spurs are already really good without him. Like, what is that fit going to be? Would they have still traded for De'Aaron Fox if they knew Dylan Harper was going to be there at number 2 in the draft? Well, to answer all those questions, I think the trade looks very smart again because Castle's now banged up with a hip injury too. Again, Harper's going to be out a few weeks, and they are very lucky to have De'Aaron Fox. He's only played in a handful of games so far, and I know he got criticized a little bit because at the end of a close game against the Warriors, they went to him in De'Aaron Fox instead of Wemby, who was having a much better game at the time. But look, he's a former Clutch Player of the Year award for what stock you take in that. He's clearly a guy that it's just easier to scheme up a look for a guard at the end of the game and have Wemby be this massive decoy or like a putback threat. Like, the look that they got in that Warriors game on Friday night from De'Aaron Fox was a good look. And in general, I think he's going to be a great fit for this team, and he's going to have to carry their offense. And in general, I mean, the main reason I'm buying stock in the San Antonio Spurs is Victor Wembanyama, and I'm sure he will come back and be just as dominant as what he was during the first couple weeks of the season here. But the reason I'm really believing in this team overall. It's not just Wemby, it's the rest of the cast. Like, I don't think the other Spurs, so to speak, have gotten enough buzz this year. Like Stephon Castle, his development this year has been insane, and we hope the hip injury that's keeping him out right now isn't going to be a long-term issue. I don't think it's supposed to be as of right now, but he's like one of the league leaders in assists. He's had like a crazy stretch of a bunch of double doubles in a row. Even with Fox in the lineup, he has been a little bit closer to the point guard on that team. I know he's turning the ball over at a high clip, but De'Aaron Fox getting back in the mix should help with that. He's a dog on defense. His offense seems like it's developing as well. Like, he is going to become a star in the NBA. He's not just going to be like a nice complementary piece. I do think Castle is the future of the guard position in San Antonio, so I really believe in him. But it's the rest of the lineup as well. Obviously, the flashes of Dylan Harper were great, but you got Harrison Barnes, who I know he's kind of like an old and told name at this point, but he's shooting the fuck out of the ball right now. I think he's like second in the entire NBA in true shooting percentage. He's shooting like 50% from three and outstanding percentages from the field overall, from the line. Like, he just is a sniper chilling there in the corner. We know Devin Vassell can create his own shot. Like, he's a guy that is most likely going to be in the starting lineup from here on out. Keldon Johnson is a great spark off the bench. Even a guy in Champagnie who's had a couple big games this year, played really well in that Rockets NBA Cup game a couple weeks ago. He's like a dead-eye shooter. Like, there's really no holes in this team anymore, which is crazy because in Victor Wembanyama's first year, it was such an embarrassing cast around this guy. Really, Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, those are the only guys that have been there through the start of Wemby's career that have lasted, and they filled in those gaps with guys like Champagnie, guys like Luke Cornett, guys like Kelly Olynyk, who's going to have to play a larger role with the absence of Victor Wembanyama. And I just think in general, the other Spurs, so to speak, aren't getting enough buzz. Even guys like Sohan I like as well. I just think that team makes a lot of sense. Now, it's going to be tough for them to make a run if they end up being a lower seed in the West instead of a higher seed because of this Wemby injury. But even with Wemby being out a month, like, if you had told me that before the season started, I would have even just kind of guessed that, like, oh, maybe the Spurs don't make the playoffs this year. Like, I definitely think they will still be a playoff team with Fox, with Castle, with Cornette filling in those big man minutes without Victor Wembanyama, and I think the Spurs can stay afloat so they can be really competitive when Wemby comes back. So let's move on and talk about the third most impressive team, the number 3 spot on my list of teams that have been the most impressive so far in the NBA season. I got to give the nod to the defending champs. I mean, they're almost boring to talk about, and I honestly, last year, looking back at my podcast, almost feel guilty at how little I talked about OKC because I almost just took their dominance for granted. Like, I barely watched them because they would just get up by like 20 points in the first half and not look back, and none of their games were close. So when I'm clicking around League Pass, I wouldn't be going to the Thunder games and whatever. Look, they're 13-1 right now. They're the number 1 seed in the NBA and, of course, in the Western Conference as well. And their one loss was like a stupid loss over the Blazers that obviously came down to the wire because the Thunder just like don't die in these games. And I think Chet was out. I know Jalen Williams was out. I believe Dort was out of that game as well. And they still almost pulled it off against a really frisky Portland team as well. AJ Mitchell, we talked a little bit about him on the last podcast. He's immediately in contention for the best backup point guard in the NBA. He's only in his second year. Like, I don't understand how he's doing this. He can get to the hoop. He's shooting the ball well from outside. He's creating for his teammates. You know, sometimes the usage gets a little high and he'll get a little turnover happy and, you know, some games out there. But look, if he's running your second offense, you are in fantastic shape. He's also a dog on defense. I can't believe that this guy was barely in their rotation last year. He wasn't even on my radar. And now he's one of the best backup point guards in the NBA. And like everybody else in the Thunder, he's like well under the age of like 24 or 25. And of course, I'm bearing the lead here. Like, they're 13-1, and Jalen Williams, their second best player, has not played a game yet. And I think there was a discussion going on Twitter within the past couple weeks that was like, hey, if you split the Oklahoma City roster in half, I think both halves of that team make the playoffs in the Western Conference. And I think they're right. Like, I think I'm there with that as too. Like, you have one team with like Shea and like Hartenstein, who's had some monster games for them this year. And then maybe you give him like Wiggins and Dort or whatever. And then like the other team has Chet and Jalen Williams, like both Jalen Williams. And then they have AJ Mitchell to like, you know, run the point guard position. I'm like, yeah, that checks out. Give them Caruso too. I mean, they just have so many guys on this team that can really play. And the rich continue to get richer. And the reason why, I mean, it doesn't really make sense for the point of this exercise. Like, they've been a dominant team without Jalen Williams, and AJ Mitchell's been awesome. Those are the main reasons that they're here. But I have to give them a nod. Like, they have the Clippers' unprotected first-round pick. They have the opportunity to get what could be a top 5 or even higher pick in this upcoming draft with all the riches that they have. I know that we give their draft picks a lot of shine and whatever, but nobody really expected the Clippers to be as bad as they are. And spoiler alert, we're going to talk more about them in a little bit. But knowing that they have this embarrassment of riches. They're not even healthy yet. This team is just so loaded. So shout out the Thunder. I mean, they're just dominant. So they come in at the number 3 spot in my list, even though we expected them to be incredible this season as well. Moving on to the second most impressive team, the number 2 spot on my list, I have the Atlanta Hawks, who I can't remember if Trae had already gotten hurt. I think he has a sprained MCL that dropped right around the time where I recorded my last podcast episode. But that was a really tough injury for the Atlanta Hawks. And here they are, 9-5 overall record. They're the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. And more interestingly, they're 7-2 without Trae Young. And so, yes, we do have the Ewing Theory Committee on the case. If you don't know what that is, it's like a Bill Simmons ism where he claims like there was this old Knicks team that didn't have Patrick Ewing and the team was even better when Patrick Ewing wasn't there. So it's like a theory that maybe the Hawks are better without their best player. Maybe they're better without Trae Young. I'll tell you right now that not only are they in the midst of like a nice little stretch here, they're also 4th in defensive rating since Trae Young got hurt, which is much higher than what it was previously or really any version of the Atlanta Hawks team. Jalen Johnson, a guy who had like a season-ending injury last year, has been dominant for the Hawks. He has looked unbelievable. He had like a ridiculous stat line in a game against Utah. He had like a 35 point, like 15 assists, like 12 rebounds and like 7 steals, something stupid like that against the Hawks the other game. You know, he's kind of taken on that point forward role. Him and Dyson Daniels have been most of the ones making plays for the Hawks. I thought Nickeil Alexander-Walker was going to step more into that role. Instead, he's just a bucket. He's also in the starting lineup and has been an incredible signings for the Hawks. That guy can't miss. He's been much more aggressively offensively than what we ever saw from Nickeil in Minnesota. So I really like this Hawks team. I mean, they have been super impressive. Even Porzingis, a guy that, you know, a lot of people were gassing that signing, but I was like, I don't know how much you really are going to get from him. I mean, he basically plays every other game, and it doesn't matter because Onyeka Okongwu is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. Like, every single year, for one reason or another, he can never just be the team's true starting center. Maybe he got that nod a little bit last year. They finally moved on to have Capella be the one come off the bench. But for whatever reason, he's never the starting center at the start of the season. And every year, he just puts on a show. He's a little undersized, but he's, you know, really competitive as a rim protector. Now he's like can't miss from 3 this year. This is a new development. I mean, in general, this Hawks team makes a lot of sense as this long, rangy team that's really frisky. The shooting can be hit or miss with the group that they have, but I think Reece Shea, after starting the year hurt, is going to come on strong down the stretch here. And it's just really fascinating to see what this Atlanta team looks like. A lot of people were in on them before the year, but nobody was really buying stock in the Hawks right when Trae Young got hurt. I mean, there were some people out there that were, you know, Trae haters or whatever that wanted to see how the team did, but this has definitely surpassed my expectations for the team so far. And I think it just goes to show the longer this lasts and the longer this run of dominance without Trae, it's just going to make it that much more likely that he actually becomes available on the block. Maybe a move is made at the deadline or maybe something takes place this offseason. But I do think you could make the argument that the future of the team, like the future franchise player, could already be on the roster in Jalen Johnson playing really well right now. So interesting to see how Atlanta does until Trae Young gets back in the lineup. And then finally, the most impressive team in the NBA so far this season, obviously, again, it's very young in this NBA season, is your Detroit Pistons. They've won 10 in a row now. I didn't even see any of the game that's basically just wrapped up at the time of me recording this podcast. They are 12-2 and the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and I am buying all the Pistons stock that I can get. Now, before I get into like the real reasons that I'm buying stock in this team, I just wanted to call out, like, this team is on fire. Like, again, obviously they've won 10 in a row, but the lineup that they're trotting out right now is ridiculous. I think they've gotten a couple guys back. I think Duren actually played tonight, but I don't think Cade ended up playing. But in the midst of this winning streak, in an NBA Cup game this past Friday night, here's the starting lineup that they trotted out in a win over the Philadelphia 76ers. Dennis Jenkins was your starting point guard, who, if you don't know, he's a second-year undrafted player from St. John's that has had some really clutch moments. He sent the game to overtime against the Pistons a couple weeks ago as well. They're starting Duncan Robinson at the 2. You probably recognize that game. Javonte Green started at the 3, a former Celtic there. Ron Holland started at the 4, and Paul Reed started at the 5. So again, Dennis Jenkins, Duncan Robinson, Javonte Green, Ron Holland, Paul Reed. That team went out against the Sixers, who have actually been pretty good and like a top 6 seed in the East all year in their own right. And they won a game in the NBA Cup where apparently the players are trying a little bit more. So I just want to say there's something like systematically with that team. JB Bickerstaff has got these guys locked in. He was my pick for Coach of the Year last year for the turnaround that that team made. Maybe he'll actually get the buzz this year. He certainly will if the Pistons stay on this trajectory that they're on right now. But in general, beyond the gross lineup that they're trotting out, when they're healthy, this roster is really good, and it all starts and ends with Cade Cunningham. He's averaging 28 points a game, 10 assists, and 5 rebounds, and just in general looks like a top, 15 player in the NBA? You could even convince me like top 10 player in the NBA. He's just so damn big on defense, and he's actually got pretty good block and steal numbers too, and he's really physical on that end of the court where, like, again, if that's the guy that you're hiding, so to speak, on that end of the court, you're in a fantastic shape. I mean, I guess they're technically hiding Duncan Robinson most of the time too, but look, he is a two-way player that I really believe in. He is the entire hub of that offense. And look, like I said before, this team isn't healthy. They still don't have Jaden Ivey back in the lineup from the injury he suffered last year. Karis LeVert is a nice spark off the bench, but he's been in and out of the lineup. Like, the efficiency isn't going to be there for Cade on some nights. And part of the reason I'm bringing this up is because Cade actually snatched the title for the most missed shots in NBA history in a single game the other night. He did it in a 2 overtime game, which they ended up winning against the Washington Wizards, I believe. And he missed 31 shots in that game. And he was taking a lot of flack online from, again, people I'm assuming who didn't actually watch the game. Like, I'm not going to go out there and say it was the best game that Cade's played, but he finished the game with a 45-point triple-double. And again, all these stats are inflated a little bit because the game went into double overtime. But look, he had to take the shots. He was banged up. Like, the rest of the team, missing LeVert, missing Tobias Harris, etc. They need Cade to create. And in a game against the Wizards, he was getting to his spots. He just wasn't finishing. Again, I think he was playing through a back injury or something like that. I give that guy so much credit for going out there and just continuing to shoot the ball. Maybe he could have saved face. Maybe he could have been a little bit more passive, but they would have lost that game. I rewatched like the last fourth quarter and both overtimes. Like, they needed every single one of those Cade shot attempts, and it's not always going to be pretty. I hope eventually, as the rest of this Pistons team gets back to full health, he's going to have more efficient nights. And in general, I think he's shooting like 28% from 3 on the year, which he was a lot higher than that last year. So I expect that efficiency to go up as the season goes on. So he is a stud. I can't say enough good things about Cade Cunningham. He's had a few clutch performances as well. He's probably one of the clubhouse leaders for Clutch Player of the Year award. Jalen Duren has been a monster this year, averaging 19 and 12. I mean, if there's any young people listening to this podcast that don't know what prime Dwight Howard looked like on the court, Jalen Duren just seems to look more and more like him every year. He has improved as a passer a little bit. He's cut down on the turnovers a little bit from where he was before, but he's just a monster finisher. He's like the best lob threat in the NBA besides Wemby. You know, catching passes from a true point guard in Cade Cunningham, that stuff's really fun to watch. And then on the wings, you have guys like Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, who are just these big physical wings. They play hard as shit. They're so physical out there. I mean, they're just a team that you don't want to play. And I'm really kicking myself here because if you guys remember the preseason podcast I had the Orlando Magic as a 2 seed in the East. I felt like one of those teams from the Atlanta, Detroit, Orlando tier was going to step up and make that leap. And for some reason, I put my chips on Orlando because I really like Paulo. I really like Franz. I didn't love the Bane trade. And so I should have known that Detroit was more legit than Orlando. But that's where I'm at. If I could sell my Magic stock and buy Piston stock, I would. I do think the Magic are going to climb up the standings a little bit. They've had a little bit of a disappointing start. But in general, I think Detroit's here to stay. Like, I'm maybe not the 1 seed overall because Cleveland's coming, you know, Milwaukee's in the mix, New York is in the mix, whatever. But I just think that for what I've seen from the Pistons, doing it with this skeleton crew, Ivy gets back, when Tobias Harris gets back, Cade and Duren should be back in the lineup if they aren't already very soon. I can't get enough of this Pistons team, and I think that they are going to be a real threat to go all the way to the NBA Finals with the team that they have in place. So let's move on and talk about the most disappointing teams of the NBA season so far. And look, a lot of teams in consideration for this honor, so to speak. I guess you could say the Kings just because they're 3-11, but you knew the Kings were going to suck. I certainly did. I mean, you could look at a team like the Magic, like I just talked about. They're 7-7 right now, but I think they're trending in the right direction. I do expect the Magic to end up being like a, you know, top 5 or so seed in the Eastern Conference when it's all said and done. So I'm not selling the Magic stock just yet. But one honorable mention team that I have to shout out before we get into the top 4 here, that's going to be the Indiana Pacers. I mean, this team somehow is 1-13, and it is just shocking. Like, if you told somebody that just started watching the NBA this season, like, hey, that team that's in dead last overall in either conference was the one that made it to Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Like, yes, you can explain it away with the injuries and everything like that, but I feel terrible for Pacers fans. I never never quite jumped on the bandwagon. I never really thought they were legit until it was too late last year. Never really liked them all that much, and now I just feel terrible that they are totally snake bitten. Again, 1-13. Here's a list of injuries that they've had so far. Halliburton obviously out for the year. Nembhard has missed significant time. Mathurin missed significant time and just came back tonight. Toppin has been out and will be out for a while. McConnell came back recently, but he might be out again. Aaron Nesmith just suffered what appears to be a significant knee injury the other night as well. Even a guy named Quentin Jackson, who stepped into the fold for them and immediately had a couple 25-point games, looked unbelievable, played in some close games along the way. He immediately had that flash and got hurt too. This team is so snake bitten. I do think that eventually they will graduate from this tier. Maybe they will get out of that true bottom barrel of the NBA here now that at least Mathurin and Nembhard are back in the lineup. Those are probably their two best players along with Siakam. Obviously, Siakam's the only guy that has somehow avoided that curse. I'd be so nervous if I was him just on a day-to-day basis. But look, this team has no business being in the bottom standings. We saw early in the season, they took Oklahoma City to overtime and it was a super exciting game. This team has talent. This team is well coached. It will be interesting if they just recognize the writing on the wall here and just really take it easy and maybe start tanking a little bit of games here and there. But at least they have their own pick. They made that really savvy move to trade for their own first round pick. I believe they actually traded their first round pick last year for their first round pick this upcoming draft, and they did that right before Halliburton got hurt, basically during the NBA Finals. And if they didn't have that move, they'd be giving away that first round pick to somebody else. I believe the Pelicans were actually the one who had it. Just have to shout out Indiana. They don't belong, but this has obviously been a disappointing season, and you can really just charge it entirely to injuries at this point in time. So let's move to the number 4 most disappointing team of the NBA season so far, the Memphis Grizzlies. They are 4-10. They are 12th in the Western Conference. The story of this season, early on anyway, with the Memphis Grizzlies has all been about Ja Morant. Ja had some controversial comments after a game a couple weeks back where he was pretty critical of the coaches and really just declined answering any type of media questions and just told the media to ask the coaches. The team wasn't very happy with that. I guess there was an argument between Ja and the coaches after that game. They ended up suspending him for a game. And it's not just the off-the-court stuff where, that kind of put Ja squarely in a bunch of different trade rumors right after that happened. He's also shooting 17% from 3. He's averaging 4 turnovers per game. And now he's out a few weeks with a calf injury. So this is really the full Ja Morant experience. He can't shoot. He turns the ball over. He bitches off the court, and then he gets hurt. I mean, look, he is incredible when he's healthy, right? The highlight plays are insane. The people of Memphis love him. He is a really talented player, but I just believe Ja's the definition of a losing player. If I was a serious franchise and had some stuff going for me, I can't imagine Ja would be the answer to whatever problems that people are dealing with. But look, he is going to be likely available on the trade block, I'd imagine. Maybe they work this out. Memphis is really banged up like many of the other teams that we're talking about here. It's just been a brutal stretch for injuries early on in this NBA season. So maybe they get better with guys like Zach Edey back in the lineup. I think he just started playing his first game the other day. Ty Jerome was a big offseason signing. He could provide really valuable minutes off the bench. I mean, that's what Scottie Pippen Jr. did for them all of last year. He's out as well, and he's not going to be back for an extended timeline. I think he's probably looking at January, something like that, return. But once they get everybody healthy, I think they could be a pretty decent team and certainly a threat to win any given night. The issue is that I think the season's going to be lost by that point, especially in the Western Conference. You don't really have time to wait for all these injured guys to get back in the lineup. So I do think that Ja is going to be more available than what he's ever been. Would the Grizzlies want to trade him when the value is this low? I don't really know. But I wouldn't really be breaking the bank to bring in Ja Morant in between the injury stuff, in between the player that you're getting on the court. Then you mix in the fact that he's always due for a wild off-the-court story. Ja's never been my type of guy, but it's been a brutal start to the season. I do think Jaren Jackson probably appreciates Ja Morant right about now because he's kind of been a meat shield for any anti-Grizzlies criticism right now. He's regressed a little bit. Jaren Jackson was a guy that I had in consideration. Maybe I even had him third team All-NBA last year because of what he does in the defensive end and how much he carried that Grizzlies team on offense. But he's down 4 points per game. All of his other stats are down across the board as well. And the minutes are the same, so I don't really know what's up. It looks like he's maybe trending in the right direction over the last couple matchups, but it was gross to start the year. So pretty low on Memphis. I don't know who thought highly of them. I certainly didn't, but 4-10 and 12th in the Western Conference is even low for my expectations of this team. So we'll see if Memphis is able to bounce back. Moving on to the third most disappointing team in the NBA, number 3 on my list, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. They are 2-11. They are currently last place in the Western Conference. They recently fired their head coach, Willie Green. James Borrego is taking over, who actually had a nice little stretch with the Hornets a couple years back. I know NBA nerds really seem to like that guy, so that might be a decent person to step in because there were mixed opinions on Willie Green. So at least they have somebody desirable in the building taking the reins there. But really, this situation is just as disastrous as we talked about all offseason. Like, I thought it was going to be bad for the Pelicans. I was very critical of them, and I almost want to just like kind of wrap this up pretty quickly because I've talked about this trade so much. But look, during the NBA draft, they traded up 10 spots from 23 up to 13 to get Derek Queen, and what they gave up was their unprotected first round pick next year. And so basically, as of right now, that pick is going to be what? Like number 1, number 2, number 3, something in that range. Obviously, there's a lottery, so it's not going to be exact with the standings, but this is going to be a truly elite pick. People are very excited for this year's draft, and the Pelicans are dog shit, just like everybody feared. I mean, they've checked every box. They fired the coach. They've underperformed. Zion's out with a hamstring injury. Like, everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong for this Pelicans team. And again, I wasn't that bullish on them. Like, I actually thought that maybe they knew something we didn't, and I kind of zagged right at the end of the offseason. I was like, maybe the Pelicans will be decent. Like, maybe, skinny Zion's going to actually make a difference, and they'll be fun to watch. And I love Trey Murphy and a couple guys that they have in that team, but it's just not working for them. Maybe it looks better when Zion's back in the lineup. And I almost feel bad, like, putting them on this list because, like, Fears has been okay. I haven't, like, really paid attention to him enough. I've been really impressed from what I've seen from Derek Queen. I'm really excited for what that guy has to offer. And I think with the new coaching staff, he's immediately been plugged into the starting lineup. I don't know if that'll stick with Zion back in because both Queen and Zion kind of occupy the same spot on the court, and neither of them are really giving you what you need as far as like rim protection. So I don't know how that's all going to shake out, but I do think Queen is going to be really good. Is he going to be as good as like a Darren Peterson or an AJ Debinsa that are projected to be the top 2 picks in this upcoming year's draft? Like, probably not, but it's really bad for the New Orleans team, and it's a terrible process to do what they did. And it's just been a bummer of a season for them, and they just can't seem to shake whatever curse is on this team right now. So let's keep it moving to the second most disappointing team in the NBA. Number 2 on my list, I have the Dallas Mavericks. They are 4-10 record-wise. They are 13th in the Western Conference. Anthony Davis, who got banged up literally the night I recorded my last podcast, is still out with a calf strain. And to make things even more bizarre, Mavericks' new owner, Patrick Dumont, has stepped in and basically said he is not playing until it is determined that there is no risk of re-aggravation with that injury. And I'm not saying that is bad process. I mean, I would want to treat Anthony Davis, my best player on the roster right about now, with that same level of care. But it is kind of weird for like this new owner who has been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons since he's taken over the team to suddenly step in and say, I'm making the final decision on this guy's medical history, when all of his quotes leading up to this are like, I don't know a damn thing about basketball. So whatever, man. If you want to be the face of the Anthony Davis injury, go right ahead, dude. That's just kind of a weird story. We'll see when he's back in the mix. But the real lead here and why I had to shoehorn the Mavericks into this conversation is A, they've been really disappointing, but B, it's been so bad that they actually just finally fired Nico Harrison. I know this is a little bit of old news. This was on top of all the headlines last week, but I'm getting this podcast out late, and I still wanted to talk about it. I mean, my quick take is that I am happy for Mavericks fans that douchebag is fired. He checked every box of just like the lack of care and consideration for the entire Metroplex, the entire state of Texas, with him trading Luka and doing so in a manner where he didn't shop him. He didn't get proper market value. He completely backstabbed the fans after what was a really impressive NBA Finals run the year before, and they traded away a generational talent before he hit the age of 26. I am happy for Mavs fans that guy is gone, but what does that say about the new owner, Patrick Dumont, that he let this guy, Nico, convince him to trade Luka Doncic, to trade this guy that's won every award possible besides like an MVP and a title, and then a couple weeks into the new season, the GM, you don't even let his vision come to life? Like, to me, it just signals that this guy has no idea what he's doing, and this is them, like, immediately waving the white flag on the trade. Like, that's kind of what that says to me, is like, You can't even keep up the facade that this trade makes you better in the short term. Like, it's already that obvious. Like, I agree. It was obvious when it happened that the trade was bad, but you're admitting defeat 3 weeks into the following season. Like, you traded Luka 6 months ago. He didn't even make it 6 months. Like, the fact that, again, this guy, you would let him convince you to trade Luka, and you can't even let that guy convince you to keep his job for another couple weeks to see the vision through after landing the number one overall pick too. I mean, I'm not defending Nico here. I'm just saying it's miserable process, which isn't surprising. You know, the positive spin on it is at least he's listening to what the fans are saying. It's at this point like a security problem when the Mavs are getting clapped by 20 points at home to like the Wizards or whatever, and the fire Nico chants are getting louder, and he's just like sitting there a couple of rows up. Like, maybe they were concerned like something violent was going to happen. I really don't know, but I'm happy for the Mavericks fans. I'm just really bummed out at how terrible that process was, and firing Nico obviously doesn't bring Luka back. And so that's why the year has been so bad. Hopefully this is the owner turning over a new leaf. Hopefully this is the owner like, okay, I made that mistake. This is my wake-up call. I'll listen to the fans. I'll hire the right people. He has an opportunity to turn it around. It's also going to be interesting, like, does Nico ever get a job again? He's had a very successful career before this to even get to this point. His history with Nike, becoming an NBA general manager. But he's always going to be the guy that traded Luka Doncic, no matter what he does. Like, that's going to be the first line in his obituary, everything. He is the guy that traded Luka. Unless he somehow does the ultimate career 180, I don't know how you live that down. But keeping it moving to the rest of the Mavs struggles. I mean, Clay is coming off the bench. He's in a different phase of his career. It's been pretty gross for him, and I'm just really bummed out for Clay. Like, he was arguably the person that suffered from the Luka trade the most. I mean, he signed in Dallas to play with Luka to get this guy that was going to make him look awesome off the ball. Lively and Gafford have been in and out of the lineup, but all that being said, it's been gross for the Mavericks, but I will say that Cooper Flag is legit. He looks so much better in the last 10 games than he did like the first 5 or so. He's good enough on his own to maybe even keep this team afloat until AD comes back. Like, we have no idea what that timeline is. Hopefully they get AD back in 2 weeks, and then maybe they get Kyrie back in a month or two, and if they're hanging around that play-in race, they could make some noise. But I do think Flag is checking every box. It's just a tough basketball situation with the coaching being questionable, the lineups shifting all around. It's not an easy situation for a rookie to be in, especially with the state of the fans as a whole, but I do think Cooper Flag is legit, and ultimately, long-term, this team is going to look a lot better. And finally, the most disappointing team in the NBA so far. Number 1 on my list, we have the Los Angeles Clippers. They are 4-10. They are the 12th seed in the Western Conference. They've been in the news for a lot of different injury updates here. Bradley Beal is done for the season. I believe he has like some sort of hip injury, so he played a few games. He was pretty mediocre in those games, and now he's out for the year. And look, that was a swing where they got him on a really cheap contract, so I don't want to criticize the Clippers too much, but the main reason that they traded away Norm Powell to get a guy in John Collins earlier in the offseason is because they knew they had the in on Bradley Beal getting bought out and then signing him to a cheap contract. And now that makes the trade for giving away Norman Powell look like a nightmare as he continues to fill up the box score for the Miami Heat, who have been a lot better than expected as well. You also have Derek Jones, who has an MCL sprain. He suffered that against the Celtics yesterday. It actually looked really ugly. I felt terrible for the guy when it happened. He's going to be out at least 6 weeks, probably a bit longer than that. Chris Paul, he just looks washed. I mean, I hope that he's not, but he's getting DNPs and didn't look good early on in the season. And all that being said, the main reason this Clippers season is so disappointing is Kawhi's already banged up. Bradley Beal's out for the year. You kind of went all in with this older roster, right? Like, this was kind of the true last ride with the group that they had. I mean, maybe Harden has another year on top of it. Maybe Kawhi does as well. But spiritually, this was kind of like a last hurrah, so to speak. And the stakes couldn't be higher because the Clippers' unprotected first-round pick next year goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder, like we mentioned earlier. And that just makes this whole situation so much nastier. You have all these old guys. You have this big payroll. I know you're competing in a tough Western Conference, but you were 1 game away from beating Denver in Game 7, who was 1 game away from beating OKC. You're using the transitive property there a little bit, but you say we're like 2 games away from beating the Thunder in some spin zone last year, and now you're 4-10, you're 12 in the West, you're all banged up, and your first-round pick is going to the best team in the NBA. Like, that is just such a nightmare scenario. For all those reasons, the Clippers are the most disappointing just because of the money that they spent, the expectations around this team with this old roster. The positive side of that, like I mentioned at the very top of this podcast, is that James Harden is the lifeblood of this team right now. He is balling and playing unbelievable for the Clippers. He's averaging 26 points a game, 9 assists, and 6 rebounds on pretty solid efficiency. The career that this guy has had with the Clippers so far is unbelievable. I mean, he was an All-NBA player last year. he's actually the perfect star to pair alongside Kawhi Leonard when you think about it, because he's just so durable. I mean, it's crazy to say that, but the care that James Harden takes of his body, right? Like we're talking about the same guy that has his jersey retired in the rafters at Houston strip clubs from his days with the Rockets, and the guy that also looked like he was wearing a fat suit during the end of the time with Houston and during the end of the time with Brooklyn so he could bully his way out of those teams. Yeah, that guy is one of the most durable players in the NBA, and it never been better than what he's been with the Clippers as far as like a durability standpoint. He is awesome. And without him, like this team is horrible without him. Like he is every bit of their offense. I saw it firsthand against the Celtics on Saturday. We are a James Harden sprained ankle, pulled hamstring, calf strain, whatever. We are one James Harden injury away from AJ Debinsa or Darren Peterson or whatever top prospect you want going to OKC. So the rest of the NBA, myself included, should be praying that James Harden keeps this up and stays healthy. Like, I'm rooting for the Clippers. I don't want to see the Thunder get thrown a bone any more than what they already have. So I just got to shout that guy out because he's balling out of control. I will say that John Collins, he needs to step up. He hasn't done much off the bench so far this year. He's going to be thrust into the starting lineup. A lot of people were projecting him to be there before the season. I kind of figured they might be better off with Derek Jones just because he's more of an on-ball guy. But now that Derek Jones is out, they're going to need John Collins to start. They're going to need Bogdanovich to be a big spark off the bench. I'm not going to go as far as to say Bogdanovich needs to be their new Norm Powell. That's, some big shoes to fill. And Chris Dunn is probably going to be the guy starting. So they have some semblance of like on-ball defense in the Clippers starting lineup moving forward. But those guys, John Collins, Bogdanovich, like it's not a lost cause with the Clippers. Like I don't want to be too reactionary. They could easily make a little run here because I don't think this team is bad. Lopez is a nice backup to Zubac as well. So they could definitely make a run here, but you're betting on the health of all these old players in addition to the fact that Kawhi's already banged up. This has like the potential to be a complete disaster for, especially when you consider where the Clippers' expectations were before this year. So they've easily been the most disappointing team in my opinion. So before I let you guys go, I did just want to recap that exercise real quick. The top 5 most impressive teams in the NBA so far. In order, first honorable mention, I have the Hornets just for crushing that rookie draft last year. And at the number 4 spot, I have the Spurs. Number 3, the Thunder. Number 2, the Hawks. And then the most impressive team in the NBA so far has got to be the Detroit Pistons. And then the most disappointing teams in the NBA so far, at honorable mention, I had the Indiana Pacers. They've just been snake bitten. Number 4 spot, I have Memphis. Number 3, I have New Orleans. Number 2, I have the Dallas Mavericks. And number 1, I have the Los Angeles Clippers. And so before I let you guys go, I did just want to do one quick segment. I literally just want to call out 5 players that have just been balling this season. I'm going to call this my League Pass MVPs. Maybe I'll be doing this segment reoccurring because there's a lot of guys that get my attention as I'm looking through box scores, going through League Pass, whatever. But just guys in general that I think deserve more of a shout out that haven't gotten the proper buzz nationally or on talk shows or on Twitter or whatever. And I'm literally just going to list these names and give you like a couple sentences each before I let you guys go. Starting with Denny Advia, he's just been putting up stupid numbers for the Portland Trailblazers, who have somehow beaten the Thunder. They've beaten the Nuggets, who are the next best team in the NBA. Denny's balling, and he's had clutch moments in both of those matchups. He's just a bully. He gets to the free throw line at will. And again, he's somehow the best player on the Portland Trailblazers, which is kind of surprising. Not that they had a true alpha best player, but ever since he's gotten there from the Wizards like a couple years ago, he's been better, he's been improving, and now he's easily their best player, and he's like putting up stupid numbers. Another League Pass MVP I want to shout out is Reed Shepherd. I know we talked about him on the last podcast. He had a pretty brutal game opening night against the Thunder, which Thunder effect right there on full display, but he's been shooting the ball a lot better, really carving out minutes. He's been closing a couple games for the Rockets, including yesterday in an overtime game against the Magic. He was in there down the stretch. I mean, he looks a lot better already. Like, he's making leaps. He has great hands on defense. He's in the right spot. He's making tough shots. Like, the improvement that we've seen in only a couple weeks makes me feel better about the Rockets not needing to make a move at the deadline to get another guard because Reed Shepherd is hooping. Ryan Rollins for the Milwaukee Bucks. This is a guy that came out of nowhere. I think he was on the Bucks roster last year. He bounced around on a few teams before that. I think he's only like 24 or 25, but kind of a late bloomer by NBA standards, all things considered, and he is a monster for the Bucks so far this year. Arguably, maybe even the second best player for the Bucks. He's been their point guard. He's been playmaking fantastic for them. He's shooting the ball well from outside. He's a dog on defense. He looks like a fantastic athlete out there. I don't know how he was just kind of buried on rosters before, but it just shows how deep the NBA is that this guy didn't get a look earlier. Next, we have Keyonte George of the Utah Jazz. Never sold my Keyonte George stock. I don't know if you guys remember 2 years ago, halfway through like the 23-24 season, I did a redrafting of the 2023 NBA draft, like the draft with Wemby and Scoot and Brandon Miller, whatever. And that was probably the worst exercise I've ever done. I think there's like a reel of it on my Instagram and TikTok and whatever, where I actually like did like the lottery, like a redraft. And I think I had like the Thompson twins at like 12. I mean, I was horrible. Like the entire order was fucked after Wemby, to be totally honest. But I was way too high on Keyonte George. I think I had Keyonte George going like number 3 overall in a redraft. So I've always loved this guy. Loved him a lot as a rookie, obviously. And then last year I was just like, man, now Isaiah Collier's balling out for the Jazz. Like maybe they just suck so bad, like inevitably these guys are going to get stats and my eyes are deceiving me. Maybe he's not even the best guard. Well, he's balling right now for the Jazz. I think Lauri Markkanen's going out of his mind as well. So he's not the leading scorer on the team, but he's had some incredible clutch moments. He drilled a game-winning 3 at the buzzer yesterday as well. He is not shy of confidence. He's playmaking at a really high clip. He's cut down on the turnovers a little bit as well. I just really like what I've seen from Keyonte George, and I do think he has a chance to be a real star for the Utah Jazz, so it's nice for them to finally add another piece to that young core. And then last on my League Pass MVPs list, I got to give a shout out to Jaime Jaquez of the Miami Heat. He's a guy that was really flashed as a rookie and then was super disappointing last year, kind of fell out of the rotation for parts of the season. But the Heat have changed their offense. They picked up the pace a lot, and they're really focused on getting guys downhill to the basket and having everybody else space the floor. And maybe the best driver on the Miami Heat right now is going to be Jaime Jaquez. He's just so physical. He makes a living in the paint around the rim, and he's just been really efficient in the Heat's new system. And he's been coming off the bench for them, but he's a pretty important part of the team, especially with Harrow, and Bam has been banged up as well. So I just wanted to give him a little bit of a shout out as well. So that's going to do it for this podcast today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Definitely let me know if you have any segment ideas, anything that you want me to cover on next week's episode. Maybe I'll even try to bring a guest on, who knows. But before I let you go, be sure to follow @Words with Wallace on everything. I've been saying this for weeks, but I'm really trying to crank up the social media content lately. So be sure to follow on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'll be posting reels, shorts, whatever over the next couple days there for sure. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Music, and I will talk to you guys next week. Peace.